Welcome back to Mosaic. Prior to the break, we were talking about the peace process. And you spoke in a way that gives me a sense of hope. You're optimistic about it, I presume.
Always.
Always?
Yeah, because I think peace is doable. Yeah.
That's absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What about Israel's neighbors? You were the ambassador to Egypt. What is the relationship at this point with Israel and Egypt?
Look, the good news is that you have a peace treaty that's been in effect now for 31 years.
Mm-hmm.
There has never been a security violation of that treaty. Now, it's a cold peace. The Egyptian people and the Israeli people still don't know each other. There's basically no tourism. There's a minimum amount of human interaction, some business relationships. So the good news is it's worked. The bad news is it hasn't yet accomplished what both Sadat and Begin hoped for, which would have been a more textured relationship.
You know, I had the good fortune to be in Israel when Sadat was there. That was absolutely thrilling.
Yeah, yeah.
Because that was almost like, as they say in Spanish, a milagro,
Sure.
a miracle.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, let's talk about Jordan. Jordan is having some interesting situation at this point. A lot of Iraqis have come into Jordan, leaving Iraq, and it's unsettling for the Jordanians. There was some sort of, and there has been, some business opportunities that Israel and Jordan have shared. But what's the quality, literally, of that peace?
Well, the peace between Israel and Jordan is actually in better shape in some respects because the Jordanians take very seriously the responsibility they have of sealing the border. Now, they do it for their own purposes. They don't want infiltration across the Jordan River in either direction. But the net effect for Israel is to make sure that you don't have the building of tunnels and the smuggling of weapons and so forth that goes on between Egypt and Gaza. So the Jordanians have been very tough in policing the border. The human side of normalization has also not been very advanced, but it's still a little bit better than Egypt. Jordan, as you know, is an interesting place because it's surrounded by problematic neighbors.
Oh, yeah.
And it survives relatively well. But as you noted in the question, the presence of probably up to 1 million Iraqi refugees is putting tremendous strain on that country.
I would think so.
Yeah.
You know, it's also we work with Syria. Now, there was a lot of talk over the years of the fact that there was behind-the-scenes discussions with Israel and Syria to try to create some sort of a peaceful coexistence. But now we find out that Syria is supplying all these arms to the Hamas, the Hezbollah, into Lebanon. What's the outcome of that?
I was just in Syria a couple weeks ago and
really?
was able to examine firsthand. Look, the absence of any kind of contact between Israel and Syria for the entire Bush administration, and now 2 years into the Obama administration, has taken its toll. The Syrians looked for and have found support in Iran for their policies. They now have the support of Turkey, which is, as you know, changing its relationship with Israel. And you come away from Syria saying, you know, this place is not suffering from sanctions, and they feel pretty smug about themselves that they've chosen the right side. Now, I'm happy for them if they think they've chosen the right side. I think they're self-delusional, because in fact, they're a country that can be stronger economically but is not, that can have a better relationship with the West but doesn't. And that has to do with the fact that they still support terrorism. They're a conduit of arms for Hezbollah. And of course, they're a best friend of Iran. And it's not just the United States. Europe will not consummate economic ties with them under those circumstances.
Yeah, but they were having, economically, they were really in a very bad way for a while.
And they're better off now, but I think it's an artificial period of success for them. Some of it has to do with the fact that Turkey has made investments for Turkish reasons. The place is full of Iranian tourists, mostly to visit shrines,
Really?
Religious shrines. I couldn't get a hotel room for a while when I was trying
Really?
to book a room.
Oh, that's interesting.
So it's
Did you go? Excuse me. Did you go there for pleasure?
No, actually, I took my graduate students from Princeton.
Okay, because we're
doing a study of U.S.-Syrian relations, and Princeton affords the opportunity for us to do this.
Okay, I'm sorry I interrupted. So you couldn't get a hotel room?
So I finally did, but it suggested that it's not a place that feels the pain right now of economic distress. But I think it's an artificial moment for them because their oil is running out. The dependency on Iran is growing, and without the investment and assistance of the West, this Syrian moment will end, I don't know when, a couple of years, but it's not going to last forever.
I think Israel could have chosen a lot of a safer neighborhood. Nonetheless, you brought up the fact that about the students from Princeton. What worries me tremendously in regard to Israel is the level of anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment all over college campuses. In fact, I was reading something about your students at Princeton, even though they're probably more benign than most of the universities. They had a whole issue about hummus and the fact that the hummus that was made by Sabra was being boycotted by the Arab contingent on campus. What's your take on all this?
Well, aside from Princeton, because it is a relatively quieter campus, there is a problem on our college campuses, and it has to do with, some of it has to do with the way Israel describes its situation and its position. Some of it has to do with the facts on the ground. The last two wars, the war in Lebanon in 2006, the war in Gaza in 2008, have taken a heavy toll on attitudes on campus, because the perception has been that these are not interstate wars, these are wars between Israel and groups of people on the other side, and then that carries over into the civilian population, which it has. Now, with education, you can get people to understand that when a terrorist group operates within a civilian neighborhood, there will be what's called collateral damage. But you're already talking about a kind of advanced understanding of this kind of conflict. When what you see are the civilian casualties, Israel's image takes a hit. And so there is an issue on the campuses which needs to be taken into account.
Well, one of the things that I'm so proud of is my husband had a chair of Israel Studies at Maryland University. A lot of these students are not knowledgeable.
Right.
I'm talking about the Jewish students on campuses, and very frequently they don't respond to this overriding, prepared group of people who are attacking Israel and them.
Yeah.
And I think it's a critical issue.
Right. And I think, look, Israel knows it's a problem. I'm not sure they have found a way to deal with it. They've assigned someone as their liaison to American universities who comes from the far-right camp in Israeli politics. May not be the wisest choice to come to our campuses. So some of it has to do with the spokesperson that you choose. Some of it is going to be substantive as a problem, but it's just one of those issues we have to keep driving at.
When you think about it, anti-Semitism, the problems, the challenges of the Middle East, Iran.
So why am I optimistic?
Lebanon,
yeah.
Lebanon, and that is a tinderbox.
Right.
Is this administration up for this? I mean, can they handle it, or how are they going to handle it?
Well, look, nobody I know would trade places with Barack Obama with the hand that he inherited. This is a president who, however skilled he is or isn't, came into office with the biggest burden on his shoulders of anyone, probably since Franklin Roosevelt and the Depression, with an economy that was collapsing, a healthcare system broken, our infrastructure. We now know that our education system is behind. And I haven't even talked about foreign affairs, where we had basically lost all of our friends in the Middle East after 8 years of conflict. So it's a hard question to answer, is the president up to it? What he's tried to do is to operate simultaneously on 6 or 7 different fronts, and unfortunately has not registered much success on any of them. His argument is that you can't allow any of them to be ignored. But time will tell whether the approach of operating along this wide front as opposed to concentrating on one or two issues will actually succeed.
Well, what should Israel do? What should their position be?
You know, Barbara, the interesting thing about this conflict is that when you talk to Israelis and Palestinians, they will tell you that they kind of know how this thing is going to end. There's not a big mystery. There's going to be a partition of the land. There's going to be a way of sharing Jerusalem in some way. Refugees will probably not come back by and large to Israel. There's a greater understanding among the people than there is among the leaders. If that's true, and I think it is, public opinion polling says this all the time, then what it really requires is a role for leadership to not be scared of taking bold steps, but to get out in front and lead.
You know, the trouble is that politicians are political, and they think about their position and maintaining it, and very often they don't do the right thing.
Very often, yeah.
At this point, I don't know the power of Netanyahu in terms of his intellectual capability and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, he has a challenge within his own party, because if he moves in one direction, he loses his position in the office.
I don't agree with that, and I'll tell you why. He actually stands in a much stronger position than almost any of his immediate predecessors, because he has a coalition, and there's a coalition in waiting. In other words, if his right-wing partners, or even some of his Likud members, decide that they don't like a policy in which it looks like he's making compromises, he's got the Kadima party waiting, anxious to come into government. And the numbers would add up for him. So it's not a bad situation for our prime minister to be in, where you can play pretty tough ball with your current coalition members who want to hold their seats, because they know that if they are booted out or they walk out, someone else is going to take those seats.
Well, on that note, that's optimistic.
Right.
I'm glad to hear that they're in good hands. And I know you're writing a sequel to this book.
Yes, yeah, we're going to now look at ground truth, as we call it, what actually happened.
Thank you so much. Really,
Thanks,
it's a
Barbara.
pleasure, Mr. Ambassador, to have you on. I love it.
Thanks so much.
And thank you for being with us as well. Be with us again next week when we have another look into the Jewish world. Goodbye from Mosaic. Special thanks to the K Family Foundation, lead underwriters for Mosaic.